So I'd like to welcome you to the Adversity Advantage podcast, where we will help you use obstacles, failures, and setbacks to give you that edge needed for success. I'll be interviewing people from all walks of life on how they overcame trials and turned them into triumphs. So please sit back, relax, and get ready to be absolutely blown away by some of the wisdom and stories you're about to hear. Welcome back to another episode of the Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopes, where we help you transform into the best version of yourself through adversity. And today is a very special guest, and one that's actually kind of close to home for me, because I don't know if many of you know, I actually come from a divorced family. My parents got divorced when I was 5, and it actually had a sincere impact on my childhood, my growth, my teenage years. So I'm super excited to bring today to the show Jennifer Hurvitz. She's a business coach. She's the host of the highly acclaimed Doing Divorce Right podcast. She's a best-selling author of 2 books, One Happy Divorce and Coulda, Shoulda, Woulda. She's been featured on Oprah, and Oprah touts her as an expert, on co-parenting, on divorce, and has recommended her books to the readers. And so I think you'll really enjoy getting a different perspective on divorce that she shares, because after reading her books and doing some more research on her, I realized that her spin on things is totally different than what you might think. It's non-traditional. So Jen, thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited to chat with you.
I'm excited too. Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. You're a rock star. You're a rock star. I've been stalking you a little bit, so I'm glad to be here.
So I want to jump right in, right? So I know divorce, right? It's a lot more common today than it was, say, 30 years ago, right? I think the divorce rates now are well over 50%. Yeah. There's a lot of people growing up in broken homes. The average marriage, I think, lasts 6 or 7 years if you're lucky. I know when you go through divorce, just based on people that I know, it's a lot of adversity, right? So I know you have written a book on kind of a reflective piece of going through the divorce, things you would have done differently. So what I want to ask you is, how did you handle the divorce when you were going through it? What kind of things did you do versus now? How would you have handled the divorce knowing what you know now?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so I wrote 2 books, and it's really funny that you asked, because my first book is One Happy Divorce, Hold the Bullshit. And that one I wrote really quickly after my divorce, when I was separated, and it was cathartic for me. It was, more of kind of more sad and a little bit. I was in a kind of I was in a shitty place. I was in a really shitty place. And I wrote it more for me. And it was for my readers to say, look, this is what divorce really, really looks like through the eyes of a divorced person, right? And I think that the big problem with divorce is that no one really knows what it feels like until you go through it. It's a lot like a death. I tell my clients, it is like a death, only the person is actually alive, and you have to see them every day, and you maybe have to co-parent with them the rest of your life. You actually go through the stages of death and grieving and anger and all of those things. And you have to be with this person and get along with them, breathe in the same space, only you are literally grieving the life that you thought you were going to have. Right? It's awful. It's horrific. So, that was my first book. And then the second book I wrote is Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda, a divorce coach's guide to staying married. And that one I wrote basically for everybody else. I wrote that for everybody who needs to see what divorce looks like through the lens of, a divorce person and a divorce coach. And I was writing it for everybody to say, look, you guys need to step up and do divorce people a favor and help us through it, because y'all have no idea. Right. And I also wrote it to say, look, I'm not saying to stay in a horrible, never stay in a marriage that is, physically or emotionally abusive. But if there's a glimmer of hope, do the work and stay there, and maybe stay a little bit longer. I feel like I jumped maybe a little bit too soon. If I would have known then what I know now, I may not have gotten divorced. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Because it's really sucks, and the divorce grass is not greener. I think a lot of what I thought before I got divorced was that, I wasn't having any sex in my marriage. My heart wasn't fluttering anymore. I really felt like it was going to be better. And really, what I realized really quickly afterwards was, shit, what did I do? It's not better. It sucks. Divorce absolutely sucks for everybody involved. Everybody, the kids, me, and look, it's sad. I always get really emotional when I talk about it, but, do I regret getting divorced? I don't regret leaving my ex and I, we're best friends. I'm lucky. I'm super lucky. I call him my husband. My husband, Mark, and I, we are really good friends. And that doesn't happen. It very rarely happens where you have an amicable divorce.
No, did this take time to build up to being really good friends? Okay.
Yes, of course. Well, you know what? I looked at him when we were deciding to get divorced. And in North Carolina, you have to be separated for a full year.
Right.
So I looked at him and I said, look, we have one choice. You're either stuck with me the rest of your life or we're doing this the right way, which is where I got my podcast, Doing Divorce Right. I said, we're going to do this the right way. We're not going to be assholes. And we're going to do this. We're going to put the kids first, which is really important to me. We're going to put our kids first and we're going to put our egos at the door. And he goes, okay. And that was just how we set it up. And it was hard. It was really hard. It takes work, but so does being married. Being happily married takes work. And so does being happily divorced, right? So you got to put the work in either way. You know about that, right? Putting work in to get successful, whatever you're doing.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting because I think people, they think when they're in this relationship, and a lot of people, for instance, I think there's two sides to that, right? Like, so I see your point and I agree with you that like sometimes like people think the grass is always greener. I'm going to get divorced. Life's going to be good. I'm going to find someone new. But they forget about the flip side that comes with that. The self-hate, the shame, the grief, having that like asterisk next to your name, right? I mean, as much as like, I think it's super important and powerful to own your shit, right? Like, you know what? I got myself here to own it.
Oh my God, you should, yes.
There's still like that label, right? And then also, I think a lot of people, and correct me if I'm wrong, they think getting married is going to solve their relationship problems, right? So I think you see a lot of people, they're in a relationship with someone they shouldn't be in a relationship with. They don't have common values. They don't have common visions for the future.
Yep.
And they end up maybe having sex too soon, or they end up they're lonely, desperate.
Well, that's my TED Talk, actually. You just hit my TED Talk. I have a TED Talk in April, and that's what I'm talking about. Actually, your generation, you're a millennial, right? You guys are doing a good job. You guys have got it right. My TED Talk is all about how millennials are doing it right. You guys are waiting to get married. You're like actually waiting longer than any other generation, and your divorce rate is lower.
Well, I think, yeah. And I think also though, yeah.
You're getting smart. You're getting smart.
Well, some would call it smart, but I think others would call it maybe stubborn. And like the people now in my generation, we're so focused on like other things. There's so many other distractions, and bouncing around from the next thing. And I think we also have maybe seen a lot of people that have gone through divorce.
Yes, you've seen your parents do, and you're like, I'm not doing
I don't want that. I don't want that.
Right.
And I know for me, I think it's important in a relationship, and I'll say this to the day I die, to connect to somebody emotionally, mentally, and spiritually way before you have sex with them. Because, and I say this, right, I'm not saying that like,
I'm like I'm so proud of you. I'm like a proud mama right now.
Well, and here's the reason I say this, right? Because beauty fades. Like eventually, like you're gonna start to get wrinkles here. You're gonna start to like, your nose gonna look, you're gonna like get some rolls here. And then like that same person's going to have like a heart attack, or that same person's going to get hurt.
Right.
And then it's like you're do or die, like ride or die. Like, is that really going to come in? And if you just have the sex that binds you, like, well, shit, I'm not attracted to her physically or him physically anymore. Like,
but most people leave at that point. So you're good. So girls out there, you've got, I don't know if you have a girlfriend, but I'm just talking about, you're the kind of guy that most women, that's what we look for, right? But you're an anomaly. That doesn't happen. Because around 7 years or 8 years, we all go, oh, my heart doesn't flutter anymore. What's going on? The garage door opens and I don't feel that anymore. I've got to get, and we run, right? Because what happens is that honeymoon phase, right? It goes away, but that's normal, right? That's supposed to happen. It's supposed to turn to admiration and affection and respect, and you should stay there. You shouldn't leave, but most people do, right? So you're hitting the nail on the head.
Well, yeah, and I think also it's like we try to think that it's the other person's fault,
right?
But like at the end of the day, like we don't put enough time and effort into ourselves and being like, like maybe there's some work I need to do on myself, and also adding in the fact that there's this American dream, right? That you're supposed to be married, have kids by like age whatever, have a house, all this stuff, and people try to get there without like building the foundation, right? And what happens is that it creates a lot of debt in a relationship, financial debt, all these things that you got to then
resentment.
Come out of. And I think like
it's just tough. And I know, like, I don't know what it's like out there on the online like, dating world. 'Cause I haven't.
Oh, that's a whole other podcast, honey. That's a whole other, but seriously, you're doing my TED Talk for me. I feel like you should be like on stage with me right now. You're literally doing my TED Talk. It's everything you're talking about. I'm like, oh my God. It's seriously, online dating is an absolute nightmare, but people have set my clients, I do that too. My dating is my favorite thing to talk about, but people set their expectations way too high on this whole dating thing. Like they just need to chill out and have fun and relax. And like, oh my gosh, my clients, I can't even tell you, I have girls walk in and they're 27, 28. They're like, I have to get married. I have to get married now. My eggs. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, just chill, girls, just chill. It's just really, it's hard.
Yeah, and I think people rush into things, right, without even like building that rapport, that foundation.
Yeah.
And then like the guy, just say the guy, for example, was like, he ends up with like not into her or whatever. And then he leaves, but it's because, the woman a lot of times, I'll just say it as an example, like didn't like, I guess, respect herself enough to build a solid relationship before having sex or whatever.
Yeah.
And then because if that happens, the guy might have left anyway, but there's a greater chance that he stays if there's a lot more of an emotional attachment that's been created between them. And so like there's people who go through divorce, and I've seen it both ways. I've seen people go through divorce and be like, fuck my ex-husband. Like he's like whatever. Right. Like, I mean, I've seen that sort of thing. I've seen people, they get their piece of paper. I mean, I have a friend who went through a divorce years ago, and she got her piece of paper, and like she had like she had a party. She went out, like got like,
she's like,
and I'm like, and I've also seen the side, obviously, where people are mourning it and grieving, not the loss of their spouse, but the loss of the
life they thought they were going to have.
And the commitment, the vows, all that stuff, right?
That was me.
Right. What do you think people now looking back, like, what do you think if you were to say like the top 3 to 5 things on how to survive that point in your life?
I can tell you the biggest mistakes I know that and helped, and I'll do both the mistakes and then how to flip it. My biggest, the thing that I made a mistake, I dated too soon.
Like how soon?
Really soon. No, we have to wait like a year, right? So the separation, but you can date also if it's in your agreement. But I thought I was ready. I thought my mind was ready. I thought, I could do this. And I was in a loveless, sexless marriage. So I was ready. I was married for 13 years. So I didn't even know who I was as an individual. So even though my body was ready, because I was like, I got to get laid. Like, this is just like, I'm like, I got to have some sex. This is crazy, with a new person and a new whatever. And my mind was not ready. So I tell all of my clients, if they walk in my door, I'm like, look, wait a year. Find out who you are. Find out who you are as an individual, where your spirit is, your mind is, where your soul is, what makes you who you are. What do you like to do by yourself? What are your goals? What are your, like if you have kids, what are they doing? Where are they like I look back and I'm like, what was I thinking? But here's the problem. You think you know everything. So I thought I knew everything. And no matter what anyone told me, I didn't care. I didn't listen. It didn't matter. I was going to do what I was going to do. I wish I had a me. I wish I had a Woulda, Coulda, Shoulda book to hand to me so that I would read something like that to help me, if that makes sense. I didn't believe anyone because I had to go through it.
Yeah. And I think you're right, because I think there's a lot of self-reflection and work that needs to be done on the inner side of people. They're going through tough, just like in anything, whether they're recovering from a divorce, addiction,
right,
whatever it is, that people, I think sometimes they rush into things because they think that new thing will help
get over the last.
Yeah, and in a way, obviously, it will. It's just like when you're jumping into anything new, it will help, but not only as much as it of the work you've done on yourself.
Right.
If you've done no work on yourself and you're expecting a new relationship to heal you, I think you're getting into like a huge trap, because
absolutely, I totally agree with you.
You're still in that same rat race of losing yourself with hopes of just having that security of not being lonely.
Absolutely. And then, also with that, I also tell people too, like, you have to take accountability for what you did in your past relationships, which I know that you understand too, with everything with addiction. But like, I owned my shit. I remember saying to my husband, I remember saying to him, I was awful to you. I was a total bitch. Like, I remember
That's
saying,
my book.
I did you read that, remember? I remember saying
You wish you were kinder and you wish you treated him better.
Yeah. And you know what? That was so helpful to me with my next relationships, even with my children, knowing that, like, you know, you can't always place the blame on someone else. You have to own your shit so that you can move forward and be a better human, right? And I think a lot of women, men too, they, even with cheating or infidelity, they blame the other person, right? Oh, he cheated on me. Well, okay, there's two sides to every story. There's a reason he cheated. Cheating is not, it's a symptom of a bigger thing. Right? It's like, there's a reason he cheated. Sorry, I'm going to say it. There's a reason he cheated. Why did he cheat? What was your part in that? People are yelling right now. They're like, she's a, but that's true though, right? I mean, there's always a reason. So you've got to take accountability. You have to, before you can move forward. You just have to. So,
and that's something like a lot of people obviously struggle with, because accountability forces you to look yourself in the mirror and say, okay, like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? Like, and
I know.
and like, those are some like really tough and hard questions to answer if you're not secure with yourself. But at the end of the day, if you don't do that work on yourself, you don't take accountability, then in the future, like there's going to be other times where you need to take accountability and you're not going to be able to. And I think you bring up a great point of having the self-reflection to know like where you went wrong.
Oh, I know.
I think in general in life, like when we hit times of hardship and adversity, it's easy to blame the other person and be like, I mean, for me, for instance, when I was really knee deep in my addiction, I was in jail, I was blaming my parents because the divorce. I was blaming the kids who bullied me in high school, and I was blaming, my friends, whatever. And then I remember my cellmate, who like was the guy who helped save my life, looked at me and just told me to stop being a bitch.
Oh, is that what he said? How long were you in?
A little less than 90 days.
Okay.
So he was just like, and when you're in jail, it's like, this was back in 2008. People, it's just how, it's kind of like, there was no reason for him to sugarcoat anything to me. Like, so I'm in jail. How much worse can my life get? And he just said, like, dude, like, you're sitting here and you've completely, pretty much said, like, you've given up the control from yourself and the power and put it on other people, saying, woe is me. He's like, most people will do that. Your parents got divorced. You were this and that in high school. And like, you got yourself into drugs and you're selling drugs. He's like, you decided to make the choices that got yourself
absolutely
here.
Right.
And he's like, so you have a choice in how you're going to, respond and move forward with the situation. Do you think that a lot of people, when they're going through divorce, they're going through stuff like that, do you think they use that as a way to prolong the work they have to do on themselves?
This is so funny. I can't even believe it. It's the weirdest thing. I think that everything happens for a reason, but so crazy. I believe that you choose everything. I actually wrote, it's funny, you wrote something in one of your memes I've been stalking you on your thing about choosing and making a choice. I believe that choice is everything. I say you choose to be happy. You choose happy. I also believe you choose to be in love. I think that in love isn't a feeling. I think that in love is a choice, that you choose to be in love. And I tell people all the time, you got to choose to get up every day and love the person you're with. Right? Just like you choose your underwear, you choose your socks, you got to choose the person next to you. And you got to show up for that person every day, right? I didn't do that in my marriage. I chose to be a great mom. I always cry when I say this. I was the best mom ever. I still am the best mom. I'll fight with anyone all day long. I'm like, I am the best mom. But I was a shitty wife, right? But I chose to be a shitty wife. Just like my husband chose to be a shitty husband. He was a great dad. He's the best dad. But you make choices every day, right? You do. You choose to go left or right. You choose to buy the drugs. You choose to sell the drugs. Those are choices you're making. So you get that, right? I mean.
Yeah. And how does somebody, so I remember reading in your book that one of the things, what?
I'm scared. Okay, go ahead. I was getting nervous.
Reading in your book, like one of the things that, and I'm sure this is very common, that your husband would come home after work, right? Yeah. And then like you'd be like bathing your kids. You'd be like, "Look who decided to finally show up," or something like that.
Yes, passive aggressive, party of one. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So like you got to the point of like resentment, being passive aggressive, and I know when you get to that point in a relationship, when you become resentful towards someone, it's hard to move out of that. Like what?
I couldn't do it.
How do you, like, now looking back, what would you have done differently to get out of that?
I just would have been, you know what? I was such a bitch. I was so angry. I was so angry. But I shared this in the book, but my son, he's on the spectrum. He has Asperger's, which he doesn't really anymore. We say he fell off, but I was raising a special needs kid. So I was exhausted and I was tired. And doesn't make it right. But, I felt like Mark, my husband, he got to go to work, right? He got to have adult conversations. He got to shower every day. And I was like in baby barf and shit all over me. And I was, so like, but I loved that. I also got to see my kids take their first steps. I got to see my kids talk first. I got to be with my babies every day, right? So I got to be a stay-at-home mom. Does that make sense? So all these women and people listening today, like, I didn't realize at the time that those were gifts that I got that Mark didn't get. He didn't get to see my son say mom first. He didn't get to see Jonah take his first steps, right? So it's a give and take. It's a give and take. So I look at these girls now who come to me and they're like, oh my God, he does nothing around the house. He does nothing. And they're whiny little bitches. And I'm like, really? You know what? You better drop. Can I be really gross? You better fuck your husband and be sweet. Because if you don't start doing what you're really, like, I'm sorry, everyone's going to be writing into you saying this girl's crazy. But I tell them when I public speak around the country, I'm like, if you don't fuck your husband, somebody else will. It's plain and simple.
Yeah.
Okay. Like, you need to be nice. You need to stop bitching. And guess what? He's working his ass off, or she's working, whoever the breadwinner is. You guys are working your butts off all day long. Be kind to each other. Is it that hard to smile at the end of the day and be sweet? I was a total bitch. I'm divorced. Do you want to be where I am? That's the point, right? So and I get more phone calls and more emails and more texts and more messages every day with people saying, thank you for writing this book. I'm a better wife. My wife is nicer. That's why Oprah wrote it. Oprah said it's number 5 best relationship book to read with your partner for a happy marriage. Because I lay it out there. I say, look, this is what you have to do. I don't know. I mean,
I think you're right, because I think at the end of the day, like, relationships. I know I read one of the best books I've ever read on relationships is His Needs, Her Needs. I don't know if you've ever read that.
Oh, no. Who wrote that?
I forget, but it's really.
I'll look it up.
It talks about the different emotional needs from a man and the different emotional needs from women.
Oh, I'm going to read it. Okay.
Talks about what's most important for a man and what's most important.
I know.
And how they're different, right?
Yeah.
And then like how, like, if the man's needs aren't being met, then, he's not going to meet the needs of the woman, and vice versa.
Right.
And it creates all these breakdowns because it's funny, like, we only do like what we know. So for instance, like, the book, The 5 Love Languages.
I love that book. Do you like that book?
It's a good book. Yeah. It's pretty generic, right? But it's very simple. But the reason I bring this up is we only know what we know. So if our love languages are acts of service and affirmations, like, that's how we're going to deliver that to our partners, because that's what we know. That's what we know. Right. But if our partner's love language is, gifts and
words
or whatever,
words.
then they're not going to receive that in the same loving way that I would. So, like, and I just think these disconnects happen because people don't have open communication and set like guidelines and like relationship goals, because it's just like anything else. If you're building a business, right, and you build a business and you build it for like a few years, and everything's great, and then you just stop working on the business, your business is going to freaking fail.
It's like a flower. You have to keep watering it, right? A garden.
It's the same thing with relationships. If you start off and you build this solid relationship, and then all of a sudden you stop watering the plants, plants freaking die.
Yeah, seriously.
Then you're going to wonder what happened. You're like, well.
You're like, what the hell? I feel like you have to have a little meeting. And I tell whatever, every Sunday or every Friday night over whatever, you have dinner, but you have to talk about what the pros and cons of your week. And you have to connect, right? And I don't think it should be in bed when you're about to watch TV or Games of Thrones on, or you're watching whatever. Right. Like you have to connect and actually say, hey, what happened this week that was good with you? And what happened that wasn't great? And let's do pros and cons. And every week you need to have that conversation and really legitimately have it. And go down the list together. And that's a tip that I tell my clients all the time. You've got to connect every week, same time, same day, just like a business meeting. Talk about your marriage and really figure out what's good and what's not.
Why do you think people hold back from doing that? Because I think people
difficult conversations. I think people don't like difficult conversations, just like the sex talk. No one likes to talk about sex because it's that conversation where, like, right? Like, who wants to talk about if your sex life is good or not? It's supposed to be good. It's not, whatever. You don't have it. I have friends that say to me, oh, we haven't had sex in 6 months. It's fine. Okay. No, it ain't.
Right.
Okay. Like, you don't have sex in 6 months. That's not okay, guys. It's not okay. Everyone's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. No, it's fine if there's a medical problem, if, he's in overseas and whatever. Like, if he's on a business trip for 6, that's okay. Right. But like, if you're not having sex and you're sleeping next to the guy, there's a problem.
Yeah.
You got to talk about it. There's a problem. but those are tough. But there are so many good resources. I mean, my podcast, I have sexologists, I have sex therapists, I have sex gurus, I have more sex talk. There's places you can find, right? People to help you. So everyone should be talking about sex. I love it.
I think it's such a vulnerable topic, right?
Yeah.
That people are so ashamed of, right? Like it's almost like,
it's so crazy.
kind of like, I think about like guys who are like, it's like they get really ashamed to talk about like how like big their junk is, right? It's like a shame. Like it's like,
but who cares? You should worry about it.
Right. Like we can't control it.
No, you
right?
can't.
So that's another thing I think people get wrong, I think, is that I've just heard people say that the reason they like to have sex first is because, well, what if he's not good or if she's not good when we get married or when we get serious or whatever? And the thing is, like, it's not going to matter nearly as much if you aren't connected on other levels, right?
Emotionally, right.
Yeah, because I think people, like, they get that, they think that we've come in a society, we're in a society that men are judged by how many women they sleep with, how pretty their wife is, how great they are at sports, how much money they make.
Sports.
I'm being serious. Like, I mean,
You're right. You're so right. You're so right.
And women, they have their own things that society judges them on as well. Maybe how good they look, how skinny they are, how big their butt is, like whatever, right?
Their boobs. It's all about the boobs.
Yeah.
It's about the boobs. Like, what's with the boobs, you guys? My God, my poor children. They're like, I mean, and the magazines and I can't even tell you. It's funny. My husband, I fix him up all the time with girls. And he says to me, Jennifer,
how's that work?
I fixed him up with his last girlfriend. It's awesome. We're such good friends. You would die. I just really would die. But I fixed him up with this, whatever. And he says to me, if you fix me up with one more girl, they all ask him 3 things. What does he drive? What does he do? And where does he live? I'm like, what?
Really?
What's wrong with these women? What is wrong with it? I'm like, you know what?
Where are you meeting? Are these clients of yours?
I don't know. You know what? I'm done. I'm not fixing. I'm like, you know what? Until I find, that's the thing. I'm really good usually at fixing people up.
It's got to be like an awesome conversation, like with your kids. Like, yeah, where did Daddy meet his like new wife? Like,
I do. They know. Oh, they know. It's so crazy. We are like it's like we're the perfect. I say we're like an unfamily. And my sons will say, "Why do you talk to Dad so often? You're supposed to be divorced." And I'm like, "You should be happy. We're such good friends, you two. Like you should be. This should be good." But it's a very unique situation. So it's okay.
I think it's good, right? Because I think like one of the downfalls that the kids see from a divorce is the failed or non-existence of an interaction between the mother and the father, right? Because there's a lot of hate, anger, disconnect, and everything that goes with that. The kids then will grow up seeing that and saying like, this is what a relationship's going to look like. Well, it's like all this stuff, right? But I think what's really cool about what you've done with your husband, right? I'll say husband.
I love it. I'm gonna trademark that.
Yeah, you could. Is that you've created this environment where you've kind of got the best of both worlds in a way, right? Like you got your divorce, right? You're not married to somebody that you didn't like really mesh with or whatever back in the day. And at the same time, you've kept that relationship intact for your kids.
I have to. I feel like
that.
I'm trying. I tried to, and it takes, people say to me, well, you make it look so easy. It is not. It's work. But relationships are work. Anyone who says, oh, they're supposed to be easy, is so wrong. Relationships are not easy. There's nothing easy. Like I have friends who are like, oh, no, it's supposed to be easy. If it's not easy, you should break up with them. I'm like, no, y'all. They're supposed to be work. It's hard. So right? And I always say to people, like, they're like, everyone's trying to look for the right partner all the time. I'm like, you should try to be the right partner. You don't look for the right partner. Try to be the right partner. Then if you're the right partner for someone, that's how it works, right? If you're trying to be the right partner and she's trying to be the right partner, then you're the right people together as a team, right?
Yeah, and I think so many people look for the other person to kind of complete them, and it's like not that way that you just add to their life, right? And enhance what they already have.
Oh, you're so smart. You're going to be a great person.
Yeah, and I think we have the image inside of our heads of what a relationship should look like, and that it's always going to be perfect. And I don't think it's going to be. Obviously, relationships aren't perfect, but they're not. There's also the other side of the spectrum where they're not supposed to be complete chaos all the time.
No.
Right? So I think people also get that a little wrong. That like, relationships take work, but they shouldn't be complete chaos.
No, God, no.
Relationships should be easy in the sense that you are doing life with somebody you care about and that you love, and that you grow together, and that your hardships become our hardships, and you work through them together. And then there's not only growth that comes from the relationship, there's growth that comes personally from that as well. Do you agree?
Yeah. You know what else I learned too from a really a nice, good colleague of mine, a friend, is that you have to take turns being the one that needs the care, right? So you can't both be in need disheveled at both times. That makes sense. So like if you come home from work and you're the one who needs the attention, you get the attention that day. And I have to back off and say, you know what? Doug needs it. He needs me right now. I can't be the one. You can't both be the ones who need everything at the exact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
Right. So I kind of like, I always was really super, I was always super, I don't want to say needy, but it was always me that when I was married, it was always my time to be like exhausted or my time to be overwhelmed, or I was always had the bad day. And I never really let my husband have that time. So now, like with my boyfriend now, I'm like, I ask him like, how was your day? And if he needs that time, which he never does, he's always super chill. And I'm always the one like blows up, but I want to make sure that we get equal time to be not okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 'Cause I think like at the end of the day, like there's this notion that relationships are 50-50, and they are in a sense that like each person has to is responsible for their 100%.
Right.
At the same time, if you think it's just 50-50, then like the scorecard comes in, it's never like 50. I mean, nothing's ever exact. Nothing's ever perfect.
Right. But also don't sweat the small stuff too. One more thing you tell people is that, the nagging, women tend to, we nag a lot, and we get upset about the stupid way we fold a towel, or the way that you don't put the dishes away right, or the way that you can't. That shit, let it go. Let it go. My friends are like, oh my God, he didn't put away he folded the towel in a diagonal. I'm like, that's going to ruin your marriage. It's going to ruin your marriage. Like, get over that crap, right? Just let that stuff go. That's the small stuff that just, let it go.
And that's where it comes back to doing the inner work on yourself, right? Because I think a lot of times we project what we're feeling inside onto our partner, onto people in our family. Like if you're not in a good spot mentally, you're going to react and project and deflect over things that you wouldn't normally do, where if the other person's in a better state, they're going to be like, what the fuck? Like, why are you bitching at me because I like shoes on?
Because I didn't put the glass in the top part of the dishwasher.
Yeah. Or because, or because I didn't like fold the towel like in fours or whatever it is.
That was me though. I'm telling you, I was so, oh my God, my poor husband, I feel like I remember making a phone call. I was at in Malibu at this like special, it's called Camp Empowerment, this women's camp. And I was sitting in a lecture or a workshop, and I had this like epiphany, like this aha moment of like, oh my God, I was such a bitch. And I got up from this lecture and I called him, and I couldn't find a signal. It was all spotty. And I remember I was just gotten separated. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I remember saying, I'm so sorry. I think you read that in the book. And I was like,
yeah,
I'm so sorry, Mark. He's like, Jennifer, stop beating yourself up. It's okay. We're going to be all, it's fine. I'm like, no, it's not fine. I'm sorry, And
now, did you ever have any like second guess? Did you ever second guess yourself?
Never. Because you know what? I wasn't in love with him anymore. Okay. We weren't in love. We both knew that if we didn't divorce, we would have killed each other. It would have gotten to the point where the kids would have been affected. So looking back, the woulda, coulda, shoulda it had to be done. I would have never had the relationship now that I have with him if we would have stayed married.
Yeah. Because I think you reach a point of like no return sometimes, right? I felt like my parents, for instance, one of the things that was hardest for me to watch was that they didn't speak. They still probably haven't spoken. I mean, maybe I can count on like one hand how many times they've had like an in-person conversation. I think other than like court and stuff over the last 25 years. So it's something different, right?
Really?
And that was just what was I guess best for them in that situation, right? And there's no hard feelings. I'm just saying, as I look back,
it's hard for you though. It was hard for you.
Yeah, it's hard. And as I look back, you see what kind of chaos that can create for kids. Because a lot of people will say, like, you're a kid, what do you know? It's like, well, think about like the amount, like you're learning to walk, you're learning to speak, you're learning your mannerisms and your habits and your patterns when you're a kid. And if you're at that same time seeing two people that are supposed to be caregivers in your life not speak to each other or living in separate houses, what is that gonna teach you about relationships or about love? And as I've done a lot of reflection through the years, I've seen that even in my own relationships, how that's impacted what my view even my view on what love looks like, or what even like some fears and insecurities that I've developed through the years, either about myself or in relationships. And I think people, they're scared to dive into that part of their past because they think that they're being a wuss, or they think that it's over, it's in the past. And I'm not saying you have to go and like get the Legos out and the dolls and like start being a kid again.
No, but it's true. It's true. What you're saying is all so true. It's so true.
You gotta get to the root, right? So like, it's just like anything else. Like if you're trying to figure out like where an illness is coming from inside of you, like you got to get to the root cause. Like where did the illness start? Where did the wound first start?
People always say to me, well, kids are resilient and they'll be fun, but really, are they? Right? So you have to really, I want you have to come on my show because I want you to talk about this if you don't mind. Because I mean, I just really would love it, because for me, people always say to me, oh, it's better for really? I know my boys they're so honest with me, and they'll tell me, Mom, you know what? It killed us. It kills it. And what they tell me is it hurt them, their dogs. So we had 2 French bulldogs, but it killed them, the dogs, to not be able to come with them we had to get, a long story, but the aftermath for the kids, it's devastating. It really is devastating. And that's my guilt. The guilt of what I did.
And I think here's the thing. Here's the one caveat I'll throw in that I think people miss a lot. Let's talk about getting to the root cause, right? So I think like a lot of the problems we deal with now are stuff we've learned as kids. I think the reason the divorce rate is so high is because people get into relationships for the wrong reasons. And they don't like do the work on themselves to really, really think about what they want, who they are, what they're looking for in a relationship, setting values, goals, expectations, all these things. And so then if they don't do that, they get in a relationship with someone they shouldn't be in a relationship with.
They have a kid.
And then the spark goes bye-bye. They don't have the common values or anything, like, you know what, like this is worth working out. And then it falls apart. And I think now it's just so much easier just to say, I got divorced because of my spouse, or I got divorced because of this, which again, if you're in an abusive relationship, you're with a narcissist, right. Like roll out. And obviously there's something to be said that, yeah, I'm sure your spouse had something to do with it. I also think that people just, like I said, at the root cause, get in a relationship for the wrong reasons. They have sex too early on. They are like doing it to fill a void. They have mommy and daddy issues that haven't been addressed, because it's like you're ashamed to talk about. Like for me as a guy, like how cool would it sound for me to be like, yeah, I have mommy issues? They'd be like, dude, go get your pacifier and sit in the corner. Like seriously.
But at the same time, I feel like you're right. You're so right. Everything you're saying, no one can see me because it's on. I'm watching you on video. I'm shaking my head. I'm like, yes. Yes, keep going. But no one can see me. But you're so, all of this is like so right. I don't even know. I hope so strongly that my boys, because my Jonah, he's 17. He's like, I'm never getting married. I'm never having kids. I'm like, Jonah, please, but you'll be fine. He's like, nope, never doing it. I'm like, okay. But and meanwhile, I have a great relationship with my ex. So that is just goes to show you that he still is like not doing it. Right. So. Yeah.
And I think and there's 2 spectrums, right? There's a spectrum of, I'm never getting married and they're having kids, and you're closed off completely. And you're like, you know what? Like F men, F women. And then there's the other side that's like, oh my God, I need a ring. I need a honeymoon like now, like yesterday.
Where's my Prince Charming? Where's it? Right? I got to have it. Well, that was me. Like I was the last one of all my girlfriends. I had like bridesmaid dresses in every color with dyeable shoes, and that was it. But I wanted kids so bad. I had to have kids, right? So for me, that was the only thing I needed. I wanted to have kids. I didn't care about the guy. I was like, just find me a guy and need some sperm. Like that was my deal, right? So
I think that fills some sort of void that was empty inside of you. Was taking that approach. Like something
I wanted kids.
You didn't dissatisfied within yourself though, and you thought kids and a marriage would make your life better.
You know what? No, it's funny. I remember saying to Mark when we were dating, we dated for like 6 months. That was it. I was like, I just want your sperm. I just want your sperm. And he thought I was kidding. I was like, really not so much kidding. I kind of just want you. I really wasn't even sure. I didn't think about him as a husband. I was thinking about him as a baby daddy. Like I just knew he'd make the best dad ever. Right? Yeah. That's my TED talk really. But like, I just knew he was going to be the best dad. So I wasn't in the right mindset because all my friends were married. I was like, oh, I'll just get married. I'll have kids. I probably should. I shouldn't have gotten married. I should never have gotten married. I just should have had kids. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think like the important thing to remember, and before I ask you your final question.
Oh, I forgot about that. I think I already answered my final question. Okay.
Sorry. Well, the important thing to remember, I think that people, like, and this goes for anything, is that you can't change the past.
No, Hakuna Matata.
You can't change. I couldn't change that I went to jail. Can't change a failed relationship and a divorce, whatever. You can only change how you move forward. And I think there's a lot of positive ways you can use the past, like you are, to help other people.
And you too.
I think the people that, for years and years and years look back on all the mistakes they made and they let that define them. And like, here's the thing. It's like they think because they fucked up, they're a fuck up. Right. And it's like, no, you just fucked up. I mean, really, you just made a mistake. You used too many drugs, you stole too much money, you got in a relationship you shouldn't have gotten in. And you're just now seeing the consequences. And I think a lot of people, they don't sit in the pain long enough. They don't sit in it. They want to get out of it. They want to put the Band-Aid back on, right?
Well, that's the biggest problem with people. That's why the divorce rate, the second time, is even higher.
Is it really?
72%, because people get remarried. Yeah, people get second marriages are even higher because people jump into getting remarried. Holy because they're like, well, I'm going to do, I can't be alone.
Right.
Divorce, like, I can't be alone. I got to do this again. So they get remarried super quick within the first year, and the first relationship out of the gate is the worst. So they're like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get married. And then what the fuck? Then they're screwed because then they've done it to their kids twice. Then their poor babies have gone through it again. Right. So now they have one dad or mom that they're divorced. And now they've met a new mom or dad with new kids and a new family, and they're divorced again. I'm like, wow.
So my last question for you is this. So let's say one of your kids was really going through some hard times. Maybe he's, just in a bad spot. He's going through a major depression. Maybe, he's just kind of like at a point where he doesn't know where he's going in life. And he's going through some hard times. What would you tell them and why? What would you tell them to do?
You might make me cry. Well, both of my boys, because we're just honest, have gone through, I think, teenagers. No one gives you a manual about teenagers. They really should. Little kids, little problems, big kids, big problems. My oldest one dealt with his friends using, and he's on the spectrum, and he's a rule follower. So I think that his problem was, what do I do, Mom? All my friends are using, and I'm not doing it. I don't want to. So he was kind of like ostracized for not using, which is really hard for him because he lost all of his friends because he was a narc. But he wasn't a narc, but they thought he was, right?
Right.
It was really hard for him to be the outsider and the outcast because he wasn't using. So that was hard for him. And then my younger one, of course, he's like me in another body. So he's like, Mr. Social and Mr. I'm going to try this and I'm going to try that. So we had a hard time with him last summer, and the vaping and everything. And he tells me everything. So that's really hard when your kid comes to you and tells you that he's trying stuff and doing stuff. And
yeah, the vaping thing is like,
the scariest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, because we didn't have that shit. I'm 40. How old am I? 47. What is this? I mean, so I, of course, tried to go the scare the shit out of you route. So my husband and I sent him every article we could find about death and vaping, like every article. And we did. We scared the living shit out of him. And it took him getting really, really scared, really scared. And what's it called when you green out? Is that what it's calling? You guys, I don't know. Something where you get super, super, really, really super high or something, and you can't feel, I don't know.
Blackout?
No, it's called greening out. I think it's called this week. So he was whatever, and he came home and he's like, I'm never doing this again, Mom. I couldn't, whatever. My friends were acting like total whatever. And he's like, so he, I just feel like, I think my kids are scared to disappoint me. So I think I'm okay. They talk to me about everything. So I'm not really answering your question. I'm kind of just giving you a true, I
think it's important the way you describe that and how you kind of nurtured your kids as they've gone through tough times, right? And
yeah, I try really hard.
Man. Kids are hard these days.
Well, you're hard when you were young. You're a baby still. You're 32. I don't know what I tell you. I mean, I wrote an article called 13 Reasons Why Not, when that 13 Reasons Why show came out. And I sat both my kids down and I'm like, look, I will die if something happens to you. That's what I said to them. I'm like, I will die. You will not. I don't know what I would do. So don't scare your parents.
No, I won't.
You stop scaring your parents. Don't do it. No more doing anything. You're like, I just want to like squeeze your fingers. It's the cutest thing I've ever seen. So it's hard. It's hard. Being a parent is really, really hard. I never thought it was going to be this difficult to love something this much. You'll see when you have babies.
I know. I can't wait.
You'll see.
I'm really excited to be a dad. Like that's the thing.
That's how I was too. I couldn't wait.
I'm really good with kids, and kids like kind of like me because I'm still like a little child inside. As much as I'm serious and on the show, and
do you talk to schools? Do you go to schools?
I have. Yeah, I have. I've spoken to a few schools.
You got to come to ours. Our school would love you.
You want to know something that's funny is I spoke to. You're down by Clemson. I spoke to their football team this summer.
Shut up! Shut up! Did you really?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, you've got to come talk to UNC. Anytime you can talk about drugs and addiction and scare the shit out of our kids, we'd love to have you.
Well, this has been great. Like, I appreciate you coming on. I think the audience will get a lot out of this. And,
I'm glad. I hope so. That would be awesome. I'm glad. I hope that this is good. You got to come on my show.
I will for sure. We'll talk about it when we get off.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Doug. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you've listened to another episode of The Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopes, and today you heard a telltale story of someone who's been through hell and back and used her adversity of divorce to not only save herself, but to save a lot of other people who are going through it. So Jennifer Hurvitz, it's been amazing to have you on here. I hope you guys get a lot out of it and look forward to hearing what you think.